In the deluge of news about Donald Trump's purge of the government, it's easy for some of it to fall through the cracks, especially those agencies that you may never have heard of, but are nonetheless working for you every day. Groups like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which essentially sues on your behalf if you are discriminated against at work. And this is not like some new woke DEI thing. This is an independent federal agency that was established by Congress after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, with the purpose of protecting workers against discrimination based on their race, sex, age, disability, pregnancy, or sexual orientation, investigating complaints based on hiring, firing, promotions, harassment, or wages. In 2023, the commission received over 80,000 new discrimination charges and secured more than $665 million for victims of discrimination. But a lot of what they do is public education, working with employers and employees to make sure people know their rights. And last week, Trump fired 2 of the 3 Democratic commissioners, Charlotte Burrows and Jocelyn Samuels, years before the end of their terms, and tapped a commissioner he appointed in 2020 to serve as EEOC acting chair, Andrea Lucas, who says her priorities would include rooting out unlawful DEI-motivated race and sex discrimination, protecting American workers from anti-American national origin discrimination, defending the biological and binary reality of sex and related rights, including women's rights to single-sex spaces at work. I spoke to the now former EEOC Commissioner, Jocelyn Samuels, and asked her what she thinks about those new Trumpian priorities.
As you mentioned, I am a former EEOC commissioner because I was removed by email at close to midnight on Monday, January 27th, with no prior notice, and I think in violation of the law that, as you said, created the EEOC as an independent agency that is bipartisan by design.
Right. There have to be an equal number of Democratic and Republican.
No more than 3 of 5 commissioners can be members of the president's party.
Got it.
So the goal of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the way the commission was structured was to create a multi-member bipartisan agency to work together toward consensus to protect the rights of American workers to be free from discrimination. Mm-hmm. By firing me and my Democratic colleague, Charlotte Burrows, before the expiration of our term, the president has accelerated his ability to control a majority of the commission, a majority that he would not have been able to secure until the middle of 2026, and can use that majority to advance his, I think, radical agenda to eliminate DEI programs, to protect Americans against national origin discrimination.
So what does that even mean?
And to effectively erase trans people from existence.
I mean, the thing about it is, we've seen this movie before when Clarence Thomas was added to the EEOC, and a lot of people believe in order to disrupt it or break it or destroy it, to reverse the idea that discrimination is real, and so that if an African American is denied opportunity based on race, that's not the real discrimination. The real discrimination is if a white person doesn't get a job they want. We've had friends of the show come on and talk about being asked when they were applying for jobs in the 1960s and 70s, hey, how many kids do you plan to have? Are you married? Are you dating? That's the kind of thing, right, that would trigger lawsuits. This feels like they want to reverse it and say that women purporting discrimination or people of color purporting discrimination is, quote, DEI, and maybe Stephen Millerize it and reverse it and say the real discrimination is when white men don't get what they want. Does that sound like it to you?
I agree with you. I think that opponents of DEIA initiatives deliberately conflate it with some of the proactive mechanisms that Congress anticipated employers would undertake to identify barriers for underrepresented groups that prevented them from claiming equality of employment opportunity. It does not mean engaging in quota-based decision-making. Instead, it means looking at levels of representation in your workforce. And if you see that particular groups of people are underrepresented, if 80% of your middle managers are women, but only 20% of your senior managers are, you look at that and say, there's something wrong here.
Right.
Because absent barriers to equal employment opportunity, the representation of people should look essentially like their availability in the relevant labor pool. And what DEIA is all about is encouraging employers to take those kinds of proactive, intentional steps to identify barriers and to address them before they result in discrimination. And I worry that with his attacks on DEIA, the president and what I anticipate will be the new Republican majority on the EEOC will instead work to dismantle the kinds of initiatives that have been in place for decades to ensure that people who have been subjected to systemic inequities, people of color and women and people of non-American national origin, that instead of recognizing that they continue to face systematic barriers in far too many workplaces, we will be seeing suits brought on behalf of white men who claim that they have been harmed by these initiatives, which are designed to make the workplace inclusive and fair.
I want to just for the audience, just to let folks know, in 2023, 143 lawsuits were filed by the EEOC, received 81,055 new discrimination charges, secured more, as I said, $655,000. There seems to be a real obsession inside this DEI sort of tick that is used for everything from airline crashes to anything is all DEI about trans people.
Yes.
And in the guise of protecting women who apparently should not be protected from discrimination because they're women, except when it comes to who's in the bathroom. Do you just, what do you make of that?
You know, one of the shocking things that the president did on day one of this administration, the afternoon of Inauguration Day, was to issue an executive order called Defending Women Against Extreme Gender Ideology, which essentially erases the existence of trans people. You know, the Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law estimated that there are 1.6 million trans people. This executive order would say they do not exist. Sex is purely binary, and it is a biological and immutable fact. And anybody who asserts otherwise is operating under false delusions. This is both, I think, deeply damaging for a very vulnerable group of people. But it is also contrary to the law, where the Supreme Court has made clear that people are protected from discrimination based on their gender identity.